All right. So the AI is picking up on the word fear of some sort. And okay, I don't know, because I'm not saying anything that would be against any type of standards that I haven't written already. So it's picking up on stuff, and that's fine. So I'm still going to figure out how to get this transmission across. All right, so let me just go through. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, they're definitely having a lot more sensitive AI stuff, which is fine. And so I say single people compromise, or else somebody is taking advantage of somebody else. And if there are issues with single people out there, nothing binding them together, then they can just walk away. Married people are constantly negotiating with each other. It's harder to walk away when you're in a legally binding contract with somebody, which is also why many men decide not to get married to the women they have children with, because they say love needs no piece of paper, and that's a cop-out. Okay? And so compromise and negotiation are both skills that can help resolve conflict and maintain positive relationships. However, they are different in some ways. Compromise is involving two parties with two different views meeting in the middle. So when you're a single person and there's nothing legally binding you with another person, then you're compromising yourself in order to meet and get some specific need. Okay? And so each party concedes to something. They're making trade. If you buy me dinner, then I'll have SCX with you. That type of thing. That's the single people's situation, because there's nothing legally binding, so they're constantly playing those games of compromise. And the end position is usually about halfway between the two parties' opening positions. A positive compromise is when both parties benefit from that entanglement. Negotiation, which is a marriage thing, I'll tell you why I'm talking about this in a minute. Negotiation involves two parties entering an agreement, and each party gets a concession they want. Negotiation is the process of discussion between parties that are attempting to come to a mutual decision on an issue. And so I have been redefining the roles of women and men and relationship, and that single people don't have the patent or hold the patent on independent women or men. And actually, marriage is a training grounds for diplomatic relationships, diplomatic relations, trade agreements, import, export, same thing. How do you negotiate your survival? And so I don't think single people really are smarter unless they don't rely on their friends, their family, animals, and people to distract them from being lonely. Okay? That's my version of what independent woman is that she is not reliant on company, that she only relies on the government to keep up her infrastructure, but she is self-sufficient in body, where she doesn't have to get health insurance, in mind, where she can actually develop her own mind, and then spirit. She is accountable for her own survival and demise. Okay? That's a single person. Now, you can be married and actually exhibit all those same characteristics. Do you realize that I'm married to a husband that we built a life together from scratch, from nothing, and we are in a business contract with agreements, and we keep negotiating our life. And he has the freedom to do what he wants to do. I have the freedom to do what I want to do on some level. And we're still accountable to each other without actually overstepping boundaries. We actually have boundaries. And right now, boundaries are an issue for a lot of people on Facebook, of which why we are developing this new world of redefining relationships, but also redefining rules of engagement and communication. You have your own Facebook to exhibit what you think is whatever your views are. And we have no right to go and disparage or dispute or try to convert somebody else, which is why I made that distinction that when I talk about things like Bitcoin and the Great Reset and whatever else, I don't mind having opposing points of view. But if I have something specifically that I feel strongly about relating to me and my personal views about whatever, it needs no dispute. It needs no conversion. It needs no disparagement. Okay? Single and married independent people don't need to convert other people. They just self-express and just represent, knowing that not everybody's going to agree with them, but that's okay. You don't need everybody to agree with you. You're just representing your position, your lifestyle, your belief system, and you're clarifying if there's any kind of misconceptions out there. Okay? Single and married independent people know how to strategize the survival of the present and the future, and can look ahead and also look in the past and evolve. I came into a relationship knowing that I'm going to need a partner in this because I couldn't do it on my own, and then developed and evolved into someone who doesn't really need medicine or drugs and alcohol or constant company or having to convert somebody else. I don't need to be absolute power corrupting absolutely. And I give my husband enough latitude to do whatever he needs to do and still be accountable in a business contract. I can negotiate my survival, and I don't need fame and fortune. And I know what's going on, and I'm also giving other people ideas on what to strategize for as far as the future and finances. Okay? And so the reason why I'm saying this is because trolls like to go and put me back in Dr. Phil days, as well as back to the beginning of when I started out this relationship, and then use my strategy as far as Social Security and universal basic income as a dispute that I'm hypocritical because I'm such an independent woman that I'd be working my ass off and killing myself to be sure that I'm independent and whatever, instead of trying to figure out maybe the world's changing and men and women don't need to destroy themselves to prove to everyone that they are independent and a contributing member of society and all this other stuff, that there is another way to be, because when one person dies, many people will go down the ship with them. If one person lives, everybody has a chance to live. And so I'm not going to be that kind of person who will destroy myself to go and prove something to somebody else. And that's why there has to be a voice, a different voice. But you see how immature our society is. We are so used to proselytizing our point of view, and we even cross boundaries. And so now with Facebook and YouTube and blog sites, you can control how many people cross boundaries. That you don't have to be subjected to somebody disparaging you or disputing you or trying to politely convert you, that you can put boundaries down. And that's what's so important with independent women in marriages and who are single, because there are people who are in matriarchal and patriarchal societies that cross boundaries because they have absolute power and they do corrupt absolutely. And so it is about negotiating your survival or demise and being accountable for it. Okay? And so single people might have an issue with negotiation. That's why they're single. Relationship is about negotiation. That's what we are discovering, is that relationship is about negotiation. And when you can't negotiate and peace talks break down, people go their separate ways. And so when do you actually learn how to negotiate? When you're in a partnership. And you just can't leave all the time. That's why absolute power corrupts absolutely, because when you think you have absolute power over somebody's body, mind, and spirit, you will corrupt them, which is why people were told that you should have families, because they want to see how mothers and fathers, matriarchs and patriarchs, and even legal guardians, how will they rule that household, that relationship, who's in charge, why are they in charge? And when you have been in a relationship with people and you don't have any more energy to negotiate your survival, not only do you survive on your own, you also don't need a crew of boys and girls to hang out with all the time to take up the place of some significant other to keep you distracted. And you don't even need pets to keep you company. Because then all you really need is the government to keep your infrastructure going. And a little bit of relatedness with some people. with like minds without relying on them to keep you company and distracted, because your time is valuable and your space is valuable. And so when you're allowed to expand your brain and you don't have so many distractions around you telling you that you should drink, do drugs, and have a bunch of sex, and you are writing and reading and just gaining more knowledge and more skills, and you're not trying to proselytize and convert people into a politics, religion, or scientific dogma, wow, that, in my opinion, is an independent person. And so when my husband's off, on the road or going on vacation or doing whatever, boating and fishing and all that stuff, I'll go with him on fishing stuff. But when he's off doing whatever, I pretty much am pretty self-sufficient. I can cook for myself. I can clean for myself. I can keep myself busy and entertained. And I even can take on new skills. I can write and read. I don't need him to distract me. Do you see me hanging out with a bunch of girls out here when he's gone? Do you see me going on girls trips, drinking and doing drugs and whatever else, getting into fights, or, always having to be around people? No, you don't see me doing that. I don't need to have that kind of company. So when he's gone, I'm pretty much, yay, I have the freedom to do whatever. Do you see me have any animals? I don't have any animals here to look after. That, to me, is an independent woman. When she doesn't need anyone but her business contract relationship with someone she is contractually binded to, as well as the government. That's all she needs, is the government and whoever she is in financial partnership. And then she can negotiate her survival as well as demise and be accountable for her choices. I don't need the healthcare system. I have insurance for something that's out of my hands. What's the insurance? Home insurance, auto insurance. As far as medical insurance, no, unless I get into an accident. And then whose fault is it? So I have medical payments if it's my fault. If it's someone else's fault and they have no insurance, I have uninsured motorists. But if they have insurance, then it's that whole back and forth of the insurance companies will work it out. That's called financial responsibility. But since I don't have cancer, disease, and chronic illness, and I'm not doing things to myself to warrant health insurance, I don't need health insurance. Therefore, I am not dependent on the government to keep me alive. I depend on the government to have OSHA standards, to have best practices for plumbing, for heating, for construction, and the government to keep the roads relatively clean and safe, and have law enforcement for relative protection. But I don't rely on law enforcement. I don't call the police all the freaking time. And so that's an independent woman. But could you see someone who has health issues, who's single, who is always, going on other people's pages and disputing with them because they don't like how they represent? Do you see them as independent? No. Because they're so dependent on having to dispute with others. They don't represent themselves. And if they do represent themselves, it's not enough. Then they have to go and convert other people. And that's not a sign of an independent woman when you have to go and convert and disparage somebody else specifically. I can have a viewpoint on how we have viewed relationships. I can have a viewpoint on how women are treated in relationships. I can have a viewpoint on how men are treated in relationships. And I can redefine what an independent woman is. And if you don't agree with it, that's fine. Go represent on your page how great you are, that you're single and you have a cat and you're artistic and you have a gallery and people are paying money for your stuff. Okay, good for you. But you have a cat, so you're mixing microbes together. Are you releasing the demons, or are those cat microbes metastasizing, turning into some kind of cancer later on, or autoimmune disorder, or some kind of aging process? And when you're hanging out with people, selling all your artwork, and mixing in with mixed company, are you releasing the demons? Or wait, you're on medical insurance. You're getting treated for all the different disease because you're taking on microbes from being in diverse company. Now, do you think that's dependent or independent? Well, I guess it depends on who you ask. And so it's not for anyone to decide if your viewpoints of what independent and not independent and single versus married and wherever, whatever else is right or wrong. You just represent in your world. Good for you if you have the independent lifestyle that you think is. But really, when you think about it, when you are relying on customers to buy all your artwork, when you're relying on a cat or a dog to keep you company, when you're relying on trolling other people and telling them that they're not independent because they're married, well, then you're really dependent on your environment to keep you alive. Well, you're really dependent on the dispute to give you, I don't know, satisfaction that you're right about in your world, that your version of independence is so much better than somebody else's. And I mean, that's why I don't go on people's pages and dispute with them. Because then it'll be the very thing that I hate the most is those that try to force convert people. Proselytizers. People that knock on your door and say, hey, you should read this and read that. People that get in your face and say, I don't like what you're wearing. I don't like what you look like. And people get on your Facebook and say, I don't like what you wrote. I don't like what you believe in. I don't like your culture, your lifestyle, your belief system. That's what I don't like the most, is the trolls out there. So I can't troll other people. So then I have to represent. And that's a forcing function that then forces me to look at myself and look at how I interact with the world and then represent. And then I have every room to make a point that those that have to disparage others and those that on their Facebook without speaking in general terms. And I am on the premise of independent women who don't need other people to survive. Then I can make a point that I can represent, and I have my own business negotiation with my husband. That's none of your business, but I'll make it people's business because I want you to understand where I'm coming from. That you can be married and be an independent woman. You can. It's freaking possible. I'll tell you, there's many single women out there with children. They claim that they're all independent women. I'm working, I'm an independent woman, but they use their grandma, they use their mom, or their grandma and their family to babysit these children. They're not saying, okay, I'm going to go and employ them in a daycare, but oh, family is so much safer. Not all the time. You know how many family members out there have done stuff to their own family members? Family isn't always the safest. Okay? And so, yeah, so I'm redefining and I'm saying, okay, what's an independent woman? Someone like my mom, who's strategically married. Her husband put her through school. She got a master's degree. She made something of herself. She deployed something amazing that I had to figure out what the hell she deployed without her giving me the whole blow by blow on what it was. I figured out indirectly how things were supposed to be and why. And she negotiated people looking after us. It wasn't family. Her family didn't babysit us when she went off to school. Okay? She is the example of an independent woman who was also married. Holy fucking shit. Wow. Wow. That's pretty awesome. That's who I take after, is my mother. She told me, why would the man buy the cow if she gives away the milk for free? That's why I was not going to stay single or be unmarried and be in a relationship. When we went off on the truck, go to truck school, I said, we're going to get married. If we're going to go do the trucking industry and merge things together, we have to get married before we go into the trucking industry. And we did. We got married before we got into the trucking industry. So that way we could then be a team driver. That's what we were planning. And go to school together, be in the same room or in the same lodging because he had to go off to school and be in the lodging. And if I was single, not married, then I'd be with a bunch of strange chicks, in some apartment during truck school. And that was like 3 weeks. And so I didn't want to be shacking up with strangers. And so I wanted to be with my husband, my significant other that I was going to build a life with. And so that was the strategy. That's what I did. And so, yeah, my mother is so correct. Women have to respect themselves, literally. Why give the milk for free? Why would the guy buy the cow if you give the milk for free? And that wasn't going to be me. Which meant that then there was a lot more that I had to do besides just be married, okay, is then fight for autonomy, fight for so many things. And you saw what I went through the last 7 years. Okay? And so I'm telling you, marriage is learning negotiation so you can be independent later on down the road if it calls for it. Let me tell you, when people are widowed, when their husbands or wives die, some people just they die with their significant other. Maybe they rely on friends and family to keep them company because they're alone. because they spent all their time with their husband or wife. They never really developed their own thing going on. So then when their husband or wife is gone, who's going to take the place? Oh, either they replace that person with somebody, or they're around friends and family to keep them going until they die off. Well, what if you didn't have to do that? What if you used your marriage and your negotiating skills and your relationship with people to then help you learn how to be completely independent, where you just rely on the government to keep the infrastructure going and you can do everything else? What if that was a way to be? See, people don't think about that because they're so used to dying and reproducing and being distracted and thinking they own the patent on independent men or women because they're single. Not necessarily. Again, look at all the single girls out there at the bars. They're not independent. They're looking for the guy, or they're relying on their girlfriends to be that husband or wife to them. I see it all the time on Facebook. You have two girls that are single mothers, and either the marriage didn't work that they had, or the boyfriend wasn't around and just skipped out, and that shit happens. And so what? They marry each other when you think about it. Not literally, because they wouldn't think of themselves as domestic partners or lesbian, but they have a girlfriend or a guy friend that they rely on every single day to keep them distracted and not lonely. Could you be by yourself without talking to anyone except for your Facebook and doing on Facebook? Could you be by yourself without speaking to anyone for long periods of time except to go to the grocery store? But not just speak someone's ear off, but to get that little bit of social interaction and then go home and be on your own, write something, develop something, watch something, learn something. Could you do that? Could you be okay with not going to family gatherings for holidays? Could you be okay with being on your own by yourself on Christmas? Could you go to the movie theater by yourself? Could you go to dinner by yourself? Could you be by yourself on Valentine's Day? Many people can't. People get so depressed around the holidays because they're not independent. People get so depressed around, on their birthdays. They get so depressed during all types of occasions where you see all the family and the friends and people hanging out together and you think that's normal. No, they're dependent. They're codependent. Completely codependent. And so I'm saying there's nothing wrong with utilizing the resources available to you. Resourceful women are the most hated because the unresourceful women are fucking jealous. Oh, let me tell you, the whole J world developed so much jealousy from other people that I even developed a thought process that you don't have to die someday and that you had to feel pain, but you had to restore it with all food and water and meat, milk, cheese, and eggs and pull the crap out and whatever else. And I'll tell you, you know how much hate I received for that because I was resourceful enough not to be dependent on the medical holistic energy healing world. And I'm married to, and I can even talk about, the being used as a sex doll to some men, that you don't have to give it up all the time to your man or wife, that you can actually put boundaries on how much you give up your body, mind, and spirit to your significant other, that you're not owned by them. You know how much hate I got from that? From the men and the women out there who think of themselves as either someone who's supposed to just take advantage of someone because they're married to them, or supposed to give it up to someone because you're married to them. You know how many women are in those type of situations right now? And they're not even married? Okay? And so that's the thing, is that it's okay to redefine what relationship is, what roles they are. And it's not for anyone to say that because you are in this specific category that you're not this. Oh, as long as I can give you the definition in my world what an independent woman is, then you have the opportunity to say, okay, well, hold on a second. Maybe she has something there. Maybe not being reliant on holistic remedies and politics, religion, and science, dogmatic principles. Maybe not relying on the healthcare system to bail you out because your lifestyle became too much. Maybe being resourceful enough to utilize the resources at your disposal without consuming so much of the environment in order for you to do that. Maybe that's an independent woman and man. And you could still be married to somebody. And you still give them the freedom to be whatever. You're not trying to force convert your husband or wife to be like you. That's an independent woman where you're not requiring people to be like you. And that takes a lot. That takes an independent woman to even realize that their way isn't the only way. Fucking A. Okay? And so, I talked about Charles Manson before. And about influence and the dangers of absolute power when you consider yourself a healer, when you consider yourself a matriarch or patriarch, when you want to be a cult or a guru, or you think you have the patent on some type of way to be. The system doesn't want absolute power people. They don't want someone who's despotic. And that's why certain governments were toppled down by other governments, because they became too influential, too powerful. And we have enough evidence in history to see what happens when someone becomes so influential. They destroy out of good intentions. Because again, you see what goes on in the health and wellness world. People are actually destroying other people through good intentions. Let me take away your pain and suffering. But what happens, take away people's pain and suffering, they end up in rest and peace. And do you have the license to do that? And if you do, then you can't claim you're saving people's lives when they end up dead from all of your protocols. But again, correlation is always equals causation. It's just the cumulative effect. But are you contributing to someone's actual demise? And so Charles Manson was extremely influential. That's why he was developed by the system. So you saw that even though he didn't specifically destroy people, he may have cut off someone's ear and did something like that. But he was so influential that he had these women and men who actually KILLED for him, because he was so charismatic, so influential. He had such knowledge and such charisma and such, intuitiveness on how to control and manipulate naive people who don't know any better. These girls that followed him, they came from the Midwest and some farm or some homogenized community, and parents and whatever else were very narrow. And so these kids in the 1950s and 60s, they want to break free from all those constraints in their small town. So they go to like the big city or go to California, and they're like, oh my God. And then here's this charismatic guy that almost like a Jesus Christ, because they were told about Jesus Christ in their community. And then here's this guy that speaks kind of like a Jesus Christ, but in a different way, speaking to all of their issues, knowing how to manipulate them. And now they are enamored. Now they are following blindly, doing whatever he says. That's the danger of absolute power, which I understand now, because I kind of was like that for a minute. And that's why I got a lot of hate, and I got the government on my ass for that because of that. Okay, and I understand it. I understand the FTC. I understand the OAG. I understand what my government was trying to do. You can't make these claims and claim you can take away people's pain and suffering. It has to go through an FDA approval process, because being cured and the cures are deadly, and especially in this environment because it's so influential. And so I get it. Okay? And so here's the thing. So Charles Manson was extremely influential. He mentioned Jesus Christ. I'm not saying Jesus was bad, because I don't know what happened way back when. But Jesus Christ was extremely influential even today. Charles Manson was extremely influential to the point of people actually KILLING for him. That's the danger of absolute power. Not only does it corrupt absolutely, but how are you using your power? What are you using your power for, and why? The system won't let any person become so powerful that they have to do a cesarean section on them or cutting out the cancer. But right now, the system is doing a great reset. And so those who develop cancer within themselves through all the different remedies over time, because those are opposing forces, they develop cancer, they get treated time and time again until they can't get treated anymore, and then it's died suddenly, or it's in the morgue or hospice. And so you are determining whether or not you are a cancer to yourself and on this earth. No one's going to say, hey, we're going to cut you out. No, you have put yourself in that position to be cesareally C-section type of thing. Okay? So that's who Charles Manson is and was. That's what he represented. And so I want to make clear that the distinction of discussion when it's appropriate to have an opposing thought process. So you've seen that I've blocked people who actively try to convert or disparage my thought process around my own feelings about women's role in society, as well as what love means to me. These are my personal views that need no dispute or conversion or disparagement. And if we're talking about something like Bitcoin or what's going on with this great reset and the eclipse, and even some abstract point of view that I'm not completely attached to, like an identity or even a personal reflection, I don't mind discussions because, again, I don't have the right answer and I can't claim one side or the other when it comes to Bitcoin, who started, who didn't, I don't know, who the fuck knows, who cares, right? But I wanted to put it out there that I don't gamble. Okay, but when I have a personal point of view about something, even if it's opposing your personal views, that needs no dispute. That needs no debate. You're not supposed to debate somebody else's feelings about themselves in the world. Okay? People who represent themselves do not want to be converted or disparaged. You don't even need to support them, but it's socially unacceptable to target them. And so there are social media ethics when it comes to representation. And there are socially undesirable behaviors that immature people exhibit when they can't handle another thought process. That's why there are community standards. That's fine, you have a different thought process, but represent on your own Facebook. People who actually target people, personally, not group similar people intentionally to go on pages and specifically target people like a predator. Okay? So when I talk about like Alex Jones and Trump and Biden and some real influential people that are public figures, I'm not saying anything specific against them. I'm just using them as a representation of how they are used in the system. Someone to worship, someone to hate. I have nothing against any of them. They are what they are. Alex Jones woke my ass up. I did support Trump at one point because he represented something that I was, that I idealized at the moment. But then I'm like, I don't need to worship anyone. I don't need to hate somebody. I'm not trying to influence anyone to do anything. I'm just representation of what it is that I believe in, my lifestyle, and also saying that you could be married and be an independent woman at the same time. And then what does that look like in a marriage? And I'll tell you, I'm in Appalachia type of area. I'm in a very traditional area. And men here think that some men think they own their women here in Ohio. And I'm going to say, no, I don't own my husband. He doesn't own me. We are in partnership and we negotiate our survival or our demise and we get to choose. And no one is enslaving anyone else. I'm not imposing my views on him. If he chooses to go to the doctor, I'm not going to deny him that. If he chooses to treat any disease, I'm not going to deny him. I'm going to have my own recommendation. But again, he will do what he wants to do. I just represent. That's why I say so much on my Facebook. So that way he reads it. Because he doesn't always agree with me. And I understand that. But if there's another way he can see the information and still make an educated choice, that's what all I want to do is give him the choice. But we don't give people choices, then they get to be predatory. And then the people don't want the choices. Because then they have to be accountable. But if they can develop a world where people told them they had to do this and there was no choice, then they can blame whoever told them they had to go A, B, C, or D, or G. But when you're given choices, now you have accountability. That's why people troll other people, because they don't want the choices that they are responsible for their own demise and their own life. And when someone gives them the choice that they can save their own life, and here's the science behind it, that's when you get trolled, because people really don't want the freedom to make the choice. They want to be told to do something and then blame when it doesn't go their way. That's the psychology of people who are dependent and who think they're independent. And they have the medical holistic system taking away every pain and suffering they've ever had. And then when something happens and they die suddenly, then they can go blame somebody else for it. And so I read that. The thing about love is you must be in proximal distance to go through that energy conversion of dying and reproducing in body, mind, and spirit. And so my husband is the only one that I actually literally love, but not love to the point of consumption. Okay, I'm not trying to consume my husband, and I won't let him consume me. But love is when you're in proximal distance of someone where you are dying and reproducing with them ideas and microbes. And there's going to be a winner and a loser. Okay? I try not to consume my husband so much to where he becomes a loser. I don't enslave him. I don't rack up bills. I don't have to go and drain his resources out of his body, mind, or spirit. And I don't allow him to drain my resources out of my body, mind, and spirit. And he allows me to do what I need to do to get over disease, get over whatever this. And he's given me enough space to expand my brain, to develop a thought process. Okay? So he's the only one that I actually would say I love, but I respect him more. Now, do I love my family that I was raised with? I would say I actually respect them more than I love them. I mean, people say you should love your mom and dad, but no, in my world, I respect them because I'm not in proximal distance of that whole dying and reproducing. That's what love is. It's about dying and reproducing. It's oxytocin. It's, what is it? Triggering the oxytocin of connectivity and family and all of that pleasure and paradise, right? That's what love is. And so if I'm not next to them, then it's a healthy respect. But you see, when people hang out together on a continuous basis, that's all about love, because it's that whole oxytocin release. You're in proximal distance of then energy conversion. And so when you get addicted to that, to the love and the acceptance and the oxytocin release and the pleasure in paradise and ruminating and commiserating and being miserable together, it's addicting. And people then develop cancer, disease, and chronic illness from that. And then they have to go and get remedies. And of course, they get remedies from each other. They get all the cannabis, they get all the the herbal concoctions. And so then they're out there doing kumbaya in drum circles. They're the Gaia mother that has all the different things for you to have to take away all your pain and suffering. And then you get to hang out together and commune together and all that shit. And no, I'm not doing that. So anyways, the thing about love is you must be in proximal distance to go through that energy conversion of dying and reproducing in body, mind, and spirit. But if you're supposed to love someone because of a certain type of relationship or familiar influence, then people just say, oh, I love you, without really meaning it. Because they don't say it, then they will be hated. But that's the thing, is that, but if they say that if they love you and they don't mean it, then that's okay, right? Not necessarily, because when you're hanging out with people and you're all friends and friends say they love each other and you don't say that, then something's wrong there, right? People think something's wrong. Oh, they treat you a little bit differently when you don't say I love you back, when you don't play that game. And so it's kind of a weird catch-22. So I don't want to be in that situation. So when people think someone should love them and they don't say it, you'll see the anger, the hurt, the unmet expectations, the weird looks, like, ew. Because I had someone say that to me a couple of years ago. They're like, oh, I love you. And I'm like, I respect you. And they're like, what? They don't understand that. They don't understand that actually respect, in my opinion, has a lot more power and weight than love. Because people use love as a way to manipulate, to get something off of somebody else, to bring up hormones, to do whatever, right? And so love is directly correlative to dying and reproducing with people at the micro level and macro level and body, mind, and spirit. Which is why coworkers, friends, and family all love each other. They are mixing microbes together, trauma bonding. And so, of course, it's a pleasure center with that. And that's why they're all in love with each other. And that's where you get the public ORGIESs when you go to these concerts, when you go to group gatherings. It's a public ORGIES. Absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. People wouldn't say it's like that because that's really explicit, but that does happen behind the scenes. And so love, unconditional love, implies no boundaries. But even conditional love implies no boundaries. How can conditional love imply no boundaries? That's called ultimatums. Love is a battlefield, right? And then even forcing the situation, coercion, domestic violence. Love is a battlefield. And you have to be ready to fight the battle all the time and be fit for battle. That's why people in the porn industry only have a certain shelf life. And then they get so depleted, then you look at people who are in the porn industry way later on, they look like they're deflated. All those resources were drained out of them during their heyday. They looked hot and sexy, 20 years ago, but now they're depleted. They're depleted. And that's what happens in marriages. That's what happens with friends and family. That's what happens in the health and wellness industry is they deplete each other of resources. Whether it's bringing up hormones because of a drug or a remedy, or it is taking people's financial resources because you're selling them a painkiller or a pleasure center or something. Or you're taking out excessive life out of their body because they have cancer. And you can't love someone from a distance because love implies mixing microbes and ideas. Even energetic energy conversions that people do when they play those virtual games. Now, when I interact with people on my Facebook, like Audrey and Grace and Tanya and Pip and other people, Marie Kavanaugh lately, and anyone else I may have missed, okay? I'm not saying I love them. No, I respect the fuck out of them. I respect the fact that we have a respect for each other's space and time, and what we share, the contributions. I would never say I love everyone on my Facebook. Oh, hell no, because I'm not mixing microbes with you. We're not developing an idea together. We're just on the same wavelength. We're sharing the same kind of energy on some level, and we are respectful of each other's time and energy, and we're not claiming that we're trying to save each other from anything. Because what the hell are you saving people from? What? You can't save anyone. And so, because love implies mixing microbes and ideas, even energetic energy conversions that people do when they play those virtual games. And what is that? Well, that's virtual sex people do. And OnlyFans, Instagram, whatever, right? Do I love my mother? And I have not seen her in 8 years. I have an extremely healthy respect for her. When I was a kid, I loved her. When I'm an adult, I have a respect for her. There's a difference. Plus, love implies inequality. Someone's always one-upping somebody else, which is why you want the power dynamic to be relatively equal, or else somebody will get cannibalized very early on. That's why my husband and I are only a year apart. What makes up that year that makes us equal? He's a man, so he's stronger. I'm a woman. I'm not saying I'm smarter, but I have a different strength than he has. I have a different background and experience than he has. But I didn't marry someone who was well-established. I married someone that had nothing, just like me. And we both built it together. And so we developed a love that is relatively equal. Nothing is ever completely equal, or that's death. But we're not there's no major disparity between the power that one is usurping and sucking the life out of somebody else. No. I respect my husband more than I love him. I'm not trying to die or reproduce for him. I'm trying to stay alive for him, which means I have respect for myself and him. He might love me more than respect me, but I don't think he has those distinctions like I do. So he actually might respect me more than he loves me, but I don't know how to measure that based upon his perceptions. I know his intentions. He has amazing intentions, and he's a smart guy, very smart guy. And I'm okay with all of that. I can handle his love, but that's about it. I'm not trying to have everyone love me because that's an aggressive power dynamic that I'm not trying to balance outside of my house and relationship. So when somebody on there on Facebook says to their friends and all of their followers, I love you all, unconditionally, and they're not even in the same space, but it says and claims that they love, well, what is that based on? Oh, it's based on the fact that they're giving you something. He wouldn't say, or she wouldn't say, that they love their friends and their audience if they weren't there. So the only reason why they love them is because they're there. Because they're not lonely. They're supporting them. Yeah. Well, love is about power dynamics. It's dependency. And you need your audience for money, for power, for fame, for whatever. And that's not what I am about. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to make money off my audience. Yeah, I have a book out there. Doesn't mean you have to buy it. Everything that I have in that book has stuff. I mean, the ingredients of the jade juice all over the internet. The thing that's a little bit different is how I dealt with that major demon a couple years ago and what I did every single day, pulling out that crap and eating food and resting and feeling everything. But you kind of see a little bit of my background. I mean, I had perceptions of my parents in childhood and Dr. Phil stuff, but now it's different. It's changed. But I'm not going to write another book right now to go and just flip all that around. You can watch my Facebook and see how I've changed since even that book that I released. Okay? So, you don't even have to buy that book. That was purely, when you think about it, even today, is purely for my own personal and professional development. Okay? Because you can't make money off of pain and suffering. You can only make money off the death at incremental levels, at the micro level, until eventually that person can't be treated anymore and you can't recommend them anything more. But that's not, again, the system can't really regulate that. So since the system is scaling things down, they'll regulate you up to a point, and then when the person says, okay, I want another one of those remedies, and you're willing to give it to them, and they happen to pass away because that was the last straw that broke the camel's back, well, I mean, the person chose to take remedies when they probably couldn't afford it. But again, it doesn't even matter at this point. The system is fine with what happens when people are at the end of their lifeline. And so, yeah, then you are a mercenary for the system. You're not saving anyone's life. That's the thing about the whole health and wellness world. You're not saving anyone's life, really. It might seem that way early on when someone still has enough life left in them to be treated. But eventually, you won't be able to be treated anymore. And so the cumulative effect from the earliest remedy to the latest remedy is what contributed to that person's death, which means that no one can be really held responsible specifically unless they had something so powerful that it was not approved for its intended use. But how people use stuff is out of your control. If you sell somebody something that has a specific intended use with warnings and everything else, and someone abuses it, that's not your fault. But you still contribute to that overall thing. But again, see, that's the thing with the whole J juice. It wasn't poison. It wasn't antibiotic. It was probiotic. Not saying that probiotic is 100% safe either, because that's a lot of life. And if you're not releasing the demons, then you could be developing cancer from so much probiotic, as well as so much antibiotic. But the salt was the balancing force. The salt was immune system activation, and it gave you the nutrients, even though it developed lactobacillus, which was the microbes, but it still had the electrolytes, it still had the nutritional benefit from the cabbage, and you still had to eat food. And so that's how the system measured whether or not my stuff was dangerous. But even then, I still couldn't make claims. You can't. Okay? So there are definitely specific, definitive factors that make up what would be FDA approved and what would be poison and not poison, but then FDA approved for what? And that's why you couldn't make claims with the J juice. Because there's no guarantee. And so I have a healthy respect for the world. And I don't want to love anyone aside from my husband, because I'm not trying to die or reproduce with anyone else outside my marriage. And even more importantly, love turns to hate when people deplete each other of their resources, which is why I watch how many resources I take from somebody else, as well as give up to somebody else, which is why I released the people next to me that I was working with. When I found myself relying on them to write something, to do something business-wise, to not be lonely, because being Jade World is a lonely venture, and when you don't have people next to you, being like, it's okay, all the trolls are attacking me, oh my God, okay? I realized how much I was taking from somebody else, even by just emotionally relying on them. And so cutting off the people that were next to me was not just because I was being mean to them. I knew I was taking from them because I felt some kind of deficiency, and I had to stop it. When they were promising me that they could be the illustrator or develop pictures, and I couldn't do it because I didn't have AI or something else. This is before AI images, right? So I was relying on certain people to either help me business-wise and or to illustrate my book and or be a sounding board for frustrations. And I'm like, so when I cut them off and I didn't have them anymore, then I had to be strategic. How was I going to do it on my own without relying on them for emotional support, for gifts, for potential business relationship. I mean, how was I going to do it on my own? Well, I'd have to be strategic. It put me in an uncomfortable place. But see, that's where I'm most comfortable, is when I have to strategize my survival in small situations. And then, yeah, with this whole Great Reset, this is going to be phenomenal. What's going to happen April 8th? I don't know. That's where I thrive the most, because it then brings my brain into function to figure out how to survive it. It's a challenge, and oh my gosh, it's a challenge responding to the trolls who think that they have the patent on what's right and what's wrong. And I won't let them abuse me, but I will definitely respond in such a way where they can relook at their situation, and then they can make their own choices, and they can represent. They don't have to go and troll other people. They can represent and be a powerful woman or man that they claim they are without trying to proselytize. And so my mother said, why would a farmer buy the cow if they get the milk for free? Okay, so once you're in a legally binding commitment relationship, not only is it harder to walk away, but you will have to figure out how to negotiate your own survival or demise. Marriages are the place to see how people negotiate their own survival or their own destruction, because people are forced to be together until they legally separate and dissolve their partnership. But if you're not married, then you have no legal reasoning to negotiate anything with anyone, which means there are no boundaries, and your friends are not going to negotiate your survival. They keep you distracted with fun. Do your friends have any incentive that you live or die? They don't, unless they enter into a legal binding contract with somebody with an interest in somebody's life or death. So your friends are not there for you. They're there for themselves, using you. Do you realize that? No, oh, my friends love me. Bullshit. But that's the thing. People enter into these microbial contracts with people because it gives off a certain type of hormone response. And when you're not relying on that hormone response, then you're not going to need as many people around you to keep triggering the oxytocin that people are addicted to. Okay? Which is why marriage is sacred. You make it sacred. That's the training ground to battle for your life or your death, or else people get lost in the wind and they think that their friends and family are for them when really they're just using them. But then that's how people will have to figure out whether or not it's worth their friends and family using them for a company, for financial, for drugs and alcohol, for who knows what. And so when you're on your own and you're by yourself and you're relatively self-sufficient, except that you need the government to keep the infrastructure going, then you see where I'm coming from, because no one's plucking your hormones. You're not addicted to all the pleasure in paradise. And you're not trying to make money off the people based upon that you're going to be their savior or Satan. And you let people make their own choices. And you don't try to pose yourself as the absolute. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's why some governments were toppled. Even back then. People are like, oh, these are evil people. But no, because you see what happens when someone like a Hitler rises to power. You saw what happened. So yeah, there are people like, maybe the Middle East or other countries. Someone rose to power and then they were toppled down through coups, through this and that. They think it's bad. Maybe not necessarily. Maybe there's a reason why. Maybe there's a reason why that JF Kennedy was toppled. It makes you question then. There's not even question, makes you understand then why the system does what it does. I think it's extraordinary when you watch Russell Brand go through what he went through, when you watch Alex Jones go through what he went through, when you watch Trump right now going through what he's going through, even Biden. No one's immune. Einstein, Epstein, Dan Schneider going through all that, P. Diddy allegedly, R. Kelly, Bill Cosby. I mean, my gosh, the examples are astronomical. And so I said, FYI, unconditional love implies no boundaries. When people have no boundaries, hate is also part of the unconditional love, because love was never unconditional. It was conditional upon many factors. Unconditional love can be extremely dangerous. Just ask the Manson clan back in the 60s. Their love had no boundaries, and you had to prove loyalty via KILLING, infidels. People who live from unconditional love constantly need reassurance and proof you love them unconditionally. Love is a painkiller, hence killer. I treat love like a drug, and I don't abuse it. Okay? And so that's when someone responded and said, oh gosh, well, you can love someone from a distance. No, that's a healthy respect. You can't love anyone from a distance because you're not in proximal distance to do that dying and reproducing. Love is dying, reproducing, and plucking hormones. But I guess if you are on OnlyFans and your hormones are being plucked by someone from a distance, okay. But you have to distinguish that. You have to, point that out. But you can't just love someone from a distance. But that's what someone said. Something about boundaries and all that shit, whatever. And so I said, what if there was another way to be? Observe other ways to be without the temptation to cross boundaries and dispute. Use your Facebook to dispute without tagging anyone. That's why I speak in general terms and only using public official names, public people's names as just an example, but not specifically targeting them or disparaging them. No. We all have a purpose. Just what is your purpose for? And so someone posted, maybe I'm different than most, but I do not see people in my life as part of a game. If I am your friend, I am loyal until my last breath. And if I love you, it is until my last beat. Oh my gosh. That's Charles Manson right there. It's Jesus Christ too. And you see how Charles Manson and Jesus Christ, how Charles Manson was looked at as a Jesus Christ. And you saw how people treated Charles Manson that were followers, like a Jesus Christ. And you see people emulate themselves after Jesus Christ, and that's how the system, the whole religious revival and the Charles Manson. Well, if you have a Charles Manson that gets people to destroy other people, then juxtaposition the Christian revival and Jesus Christ and people destroying themselves for somebody else. That's the DEPOP agenda. When people can actually destroy themselves because they have no boundaries in their love, in their devotion, in their good intentions, and everything is regulated by the government. And so I said, some people want to die for everyone's sins. And that's exactly what that meme implies, that this person is basically a Jesus Christ to all their friends and family. Oh gosh, wow. Aren't you so important? Aren't you so special? Wow, you think of yourself as a Jesus Christ to all of your friends and family. I choose to live for everyone, not die for them. But then that's the whole, again, population control, is when you have people who claim themselves to be Jesus Christ to their friends and family. And not only will they have their friends and family die for them, but they will die for their friends and family, dying for each other's sins. That is freaking phenomenal. That is insanely, oh my gosh. And so we were having a discussion on whether or not the NSA created Bitcoin. Yeah, people say whatever, I don't care. Since we're in this great reset and there's a lot of climate change, people are calling in sick because they have to. They have pain and suffering. They have to treat their disease. Maybe it's just too much to be, in a public place for a long period of time. And so they are constantly triggering something, and then they have to get treated for it. The treatments don't work because the environment's shifting. They have to get treated again and again and again until one day they can't treat their disease anymore, and then they pass away. And so someone posted in this, calling into work should not feel like a crime. Your life should not revolve around work. Work should simply be part of your life. Don't allow a job to make you feel guilty because their staffing is compromised. You're allowed to have a sick day, an emergent situation, and if you need be, a day of rest, the end. And I absolutely agree with that. Absolutely. And so again, about marriage can be a great training ground for diplomatic relations, war tactics, negotiating import-export terms and conditions, as well as peace negotiations, or just temporarily exist for the needs of the time. And so international trade allows countries to expand their markets and access goods and services that otherwise may not have been available domestically. And so that's also what marriages can be, is how do you access goods and service outside of your marriage that you can't produce yourself? How do you negotiate those terms and agreements and elicit vendors to do a service for you and make sure everything is on the up and up? And that's why you have your government to regulate if possible. And so not all married women are punching bagsex to their husband. Some bitter single women want you to think that so they feel better about being single. So ask yourself the question, what do you bring to the table? People who don't have boundaries, man or woman, hate, and people hate because they never learned how to establish their own boundaries. Okay? All relationships are supposed to have very clear-cut boundaries, especially marriages. Because it's very easy to overstep your boundaries in a marriage because people think they own their spouses. But they don't think of their spouses as independent people. They think they own their spouses. And love is very conditional, as it should be. I also have conditional respect. Everything about our relationship is conditional as far as my husband. Because if it's not, then you have no boundaries. Successful marriages are either so codependent that they destroy each other and then the marriage is over, or they give each other enough space to develop their own outcome, and either they both evolve together or one or both will take care of each other through whatever ups and downs they go through. And the outcome will be anybody's guess. And then both will step up when they have to fill in the gaps. And so two people working together does not establish two people that are independent. Because what are you working for and why? And that's what I had to, when I was in that quandary, because I knew my husband could make the bills on his income. But when you're taking on debt or wanting to have all these toys and things that are endless, because some people are endless consumers, endless spenders. They have such highfalutin lifestyles. They want all the nice things. They want all the nice foods. They want all the pleasure in paradise. And if you're like, well, I'm not really into all that pleasure in paradise. I don't want all this stuff. We don't need this, and this. And either you're going to be enslaved to work for somebody else's lifestyle. And that's what happens in marriages. People both work for somebody else's lifestyle or both their lifestyle. And that's fine. But then if someone says, hey, I don't want to have this type of lifestyle, but if you want one, that's fine. And this is what we can live on. If I don't spend on this and I, save money on this, then even the person who saves money on insurance, not having health insurance, saves money on not spending on stupid shit, saved money on being frugal, using hand-me-downs, not buying everything new, not buying toys and gadgets and things that you don't need, buying only food for survival, then you can actually be a contributing member of that family and still be working for your husband or wife without having to work yourself to death. It's strategy. Because even saving money is working for somebody else because you have to strategize how to save money so the other person can have all their pleasure in paradise. Because either way, they're going to have it. And so you got to either figure out what you can live on. And if you don't want to traditionally work out there in the public, then how are you saving your family money? How are you contributing to the bottom line so that way nobody starves? The person who's working can get almost whatever they want within reason, because you can't just spoil someone and think there's no accountability for what you're spending. There's got to be limits. I mean, come on, guys. Okay? And so two people working does not establish two people who are completely independent, because what are you working for and why? And I had to ask the question, what am I working for? Well, I'm not trying to work for drugs, alcohol, and crazy sex. I'm not trying to work for such nice things that you don't need. There's got to be a limit here, guys. Don't be jealous because you never developed a relationship that worked for you with room to cut down your hours and lifestyle. If people don't want to change their lifestyle, they'll have to work for it. Why should the person who doesn't want their lifestyle to work for somebody else's lifestyle? Which is why you allow people to be who they are and work for what you want and find a happy medium. And so what do you mean by if they don't want to change? Well, that's the thing, is that, if if you don't want to change and cut down your lifestyle, cut down all your toys and expenditures and all that stuff, if you don't want to do that, then you're going to have to work for all the shit that you want. That's the bottom line. You're going to have to work for everything that you want. If I don't want anything hardly except for a little bit of food and hand-me-down clothes and some shelter that you would have anyways, but I'm willing to help advise you, and I'm willing to make sure that we get the bills paid. I'm willing to make sure that other things that you would not pay attention to because you're working or doing other things gets taken care of. That's me working for the relationship and saving the money and being accountable for things that go on. And that is different for everybody. Everyone has their own division of labor, their own contract with their spouse. But to say that because this person isn't working, that they're dependent and they're this and that, no, they're in a business contract. Businesses are dependent on customer and provider, or what is it, customer and whatever that is, company and customer. Okay? Customer relations. Who's providing for who? Who's the provider? Who's the customer? That type of thing, okay? So, yeah, I work for my husband. It's a business contract. If he wasn't around, I'd figure out a way. But hey, we got together 13 years ago. We're not the same people. People change every 7 years. And so, which is why you allow people to be who they are and work for what they want and find a happy medium. And you can't always see what that's on the outside. See that on the outside looking in. You don't know what kind of arrangement people have with each other. You can only assume until somebody clarifies. You see, I was able to develop an independent woman's lifestyle with a 50s flair, which boggles the mind of these feminists out there who think being single is the ultimate. If being single was the ultimate, you wouldn't be upset at a married woman who perceive themselves as independent. I can have it all, freedom. I have no children. I have no pets. Okay? I have no addictions, no distractions. I don't have any health issues. I'm not trying to be a savior or Satan. And I can sit with my mind every single day to develop and expand my brain. Some people want people to work so hard that they destroy themselves. They want to enslave their fellow man, and work is so different for everybody. I choose not to be greedy and work myself to death. And I will never make anyone else work so hard for me that they die in the process. But I will not let anyone work me to death. And you will see your friends and family want to work each other to death to justify to everyone that everyone should suffer equally. Sometimes you have to be a different voice to save yourself. If one person lives, everybody lives. If one person dies, so many people will die with that person. I'm not taking down my community. People either work for themselves or they work for other people, or they work for themselves and other people. I work for myself and I work for my husband, and I don't work for anyone else. That's an independent woman's marriage. She knows how to spend her resources so it doesn't become so thin she dies in the process. Many single women wish they could be just as resourceful as some married women. They're fucking jealous. That's why I get so much flack from these single women who don't like the Jilly Juice, don't like my marriage, don't like anything about me, because they're fucking jealous. But don't get it twisted. Not all stay-at-home wives are sex toys and punching bags for their husbands. But as you can see, some women pigeonhole their own gender to be that way because that's what they think of themselves. Classic projection. And so if they don't want to be a punching bag or sex toy, then they think being single is the ultimate. That speaks more about them than you. So this video about these girls that are complaining that no one wants to date them or marry them, and I was watching the video a couple days ago, and the guy was saying that these girls that are in their 20s and 30s or whatever, they're out there gallivanting, going to bars, having a lot of sex with different people, and then they get tired of being their own breadwinner. They're tired of partying and playing that lifestyle. And now they want a child, and now they want to be married and have someone take care of them. And the men are like, I don't think I want you now at 30 and 40 after you've gone through all the bars and you're working at this one place and you're tired of working and you want to have a kid now, and now you want to go and enslave a man and be a stay-at-home wife and have them work for you. And men are just like, nope, I don't think so. And so these women are like, well, what the heck? And so young girls want to party and do whatever they want and then want to get married later, and they bring nothing to the table except dependency and desperation. I remember my husband had nothing when I met him. I didn't have anything either. We both were essentially homeless. We lived in a motel in California, in West Sacramento, right next to prostitutes and mentally ill people and con artists. And even people that were evicted from their house and they have kids and they're living, upstairs. And I was working at for an agent for like $300 a week, and he was working for a landscape company. And then finally, when we went somewhere with a friend, and they said, "Hey, we're charging $500 for this room in our house, and you can hang out with us and do this." We said, "Okay." We got out of the hotel, and we went there, and we lived there until we got into the truck. We had nothing. Okay? And so, these young girls that finally are tired of the party lifestyle, and they're tired of working so hard to support their lifestyle. Now they want to be taken care of, and they don't know how to control their spending and control their consumption of alcohol and drugs and crazy sex and all that. And now they want some man to take care of them. Well, what do they have to bring to the table? Pretty much nothing, except, here, let me bring in another kid in this world so you can go and support it. Men are becoming very smart to that, as they should. And so my husband and I, we pooled our resources together, and we fought our way up, and we lived modestly and simply. Where does he put his money most? Into the food, into make sure our house is okay, and into his toys. Okay? Some women have nothing to offer to anyone, which is why they're still single and bitter, bagging on resourceful, married women. No, single women do not own the patent on independence. They just keep confirming why they are single and why they rely on their girlfriends to keep them protected and safe. They're too lonely without their crew, and they're not as independent as they claim to be. People think using family as a babysitting material is being resourceful. No, you're just taking advantage of the situation. Try actually paying for babysitting and develop a business contract with that. So using your family to babysit and give you money is not resourcefulness. You're just taking advantage of the situation. Because there's some girls who are millennials say, "Oh yeah, I'm an independent woman. I'm working every single day and I have these 2 kids and grandma is taking care of the kids. Their friends and family are taking care of the kids, and they have someone to go and to put their kids off so they can go on vacation and whatever." Yeah, okay. Sure. So that was that video. Men won't date us. Huge amounts of modern women are crying because they're still single and childless. Yeah, who wants to raise a kid in this society and with so much need and drama with that? And so I was responding to the girl that trolled me, and she has a cat. She's an artist. I deleted her, and she might be watching this from another account. But she's an artist. She has a cat, and she was throwing how I got with my husband in my face, even throwing how I was strategizing around the whole Social Security, that you can't depend upon your husband's Social Security anymore. Now you have to depend upon your own. Can you cut down your lifestyle and belief system and everything else so you can afford to be on your Social Security? And so if you're an artist and you haven't really paid into the Social Security system and you have no Social Security, you're going to bag on someone like me who actually put in more than 20 years to the Social Security system, and that I will have to rely on my own Social Security down the road. Okay? And that women are going to have to do that because they've changed the laws. And so she's bagging on me for talking about how I got with my husband, that I knew I wasn't marriage material in California, and how I have strategized my survival with my husband, and then how I am strategizing my survival as someone who's 50 years old, knowing what the future is. And she has the gall to troll me and say that I'm not an independent woman. So this is what she was responding to. But again, those who are artists that may have to pay, if they're not making a lot of money, when you look at how many points and how much Social Security you would get when you retire, did your background of artistry pay enough into your system? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't know. You'll figure it out. So I don't understand why she has to go and bag on me. But hey, maybe there's something deficient in her world that tearing me down makes her feel better, because she specifically targeted me. So just think if all hardship as a gift of giving you the option to develop a strategy of survival, expanding your brain, toughen you up, make you innovative, amazing, adaptive, and then thankful. And nothing in life is taken for granted anymore. You won't rely on everyone around you to protect you. You are a strong, fierce warrior, man or woman, who can fight his own battles and protect oneself. And that's what she was bonded to. She says the woman who's all about Social Security and marrying her husband because she couldn't make it. I mean, she completely just mischaracterized everything. And so I'm just like, okay. So what she's actually saying is that she thinks that being single is the ultimate independence, that married people cannot be independent. And that's so far from the truth. Okay? And so, being alone is one way to see how important that is. And so I'm alone most of the time. Just so you know, I'm going to make sure you guys clarify. My husband's a truck driver. He's gone during the week. He comes back on maybe Friday and Saturday. Maybe leaves on Sunday. I am alone most of the time. And I don't have any people out there that I want to be with out there to distract me. I don't party with people. I don't study with people. I don't go to coffee shops with people. I don't have a best friend or a bunch of friends to go and distract myself from life because I'm lonely. I'm not lonely. I like being on my own. Okay, so I am actually on my own, and I do protect myself. When my husband's gone and I'm on my own, I mean, I have my own protection here. Yeah, I can call the police, but there's no, police only come after the fact. They can't stop something from happening. You have to protect yourself. Okay? And so being alone is one way to see how important that is. When no one is there to save you physically and emotionally, will you just fold up and die, or will you persevere? When I was sick, I was by myself. My husband's on the truck. I had the dog with me. My dog was alive that time, and I had to take her outside, and I was so freaking sick. I was on my own. So I could have folded up and died and just died on that bed that day, or I was persevering. I pulled myself out of bed. I took myself down the stairs and took my dog out. Threw myself on the toilet and in the shower to release those demons. I see girls, women, and men fold up and die if they do not have their girls and boys around to lean on. That should tell you everything about security. It is dangerous when you expect even your own government to protect you. Because even your own government can't 100% protect you from yourself. Which is why I value my husband and as an individual who can protect himself. Even he cannot be there for me 100% to protect me. And nor do I want him to. It is not our job to protect people. It is our job to be so self-sufficient. People are not obligated to protect you and then be compromised. My gift to my husband, I can persevere on my own when I need to. And I'm emotionally and physically relatively self-sufficient. And again, single women who think that they have the patent on fierce warrior independent women don't see married women as independent because they think that women are enslaved to the man. Not necessarily. Actually, women don't have to be the slave driver, and they don't have to be the the subservient, 50s housewife, barefoot and pregnant. She actually can be independent and be relatively emotionally stable without having to suck the life out of everything around her. And then I appreciate for what he contributes to my world, not what he can do for me. Because even if he's gone and I have to figure out how to deal with the water and the garage and all these things, whatever that he usually does, I will have to learn on my own. Okay? I can't expect him to do everything for me. But it's nice, it's cool that he can hang up stuff, but I would if he was ever gone and I couldn't be able to hang up I mean, I probably could if I had to, but I don't want to hang up a TV on brick wall like he has. He likes to do a lot of things like construction wise. I'd have to hire someone to do that, or do it myself if I could. And so strong, independent women can be married, but they don't have to be. They have something completely amazing to bring to the table that doesn't suck the life out of another person. Which is why it's important to grow and evolve in any relationship. And I'm lucky enough to evolve to see both sides. And we were for each other when we needed to be when we needed each other. But, yeah, we were there for each other when we needed to be. But we can also function completely apart when need be. Because what happens when that person is not there anymore, for whatever reason, could you survive without them? Or will your grief be so great you will follow close behind or try to replace him or her? However, in this great eclipse, I want my husband to be around so we can experience it together. That's why I married him, because I like his company. And I know I can contribute. I know what I can contribute as far as functioning during this process of instability. Remember, I was raised never to get too comfortable with anything. And I was raised in fear. Never feel so secure. Don't ever take anyone for granted, not even your own husband or wife. Be comfortable with change because it could happen very soon. It could happen sooner than you think. Anything could happen, which is why be comfortable with change, because change could be so devastating that you could fold up and die. And so what I say in response to that, right, okay. Single women do not own the patent on independent women. If anything, they're confirming why they're single. Okay, did I say this already? Oh yeah, why they're single. Hold on. You could be married and be an independent woman. How is that possible? Because your partner is your equal, not an emotional punching bag. Not really, this is tongue in cheek. I like how women like to twist other women's words around as far as strong, independent women. This is to the woman who stalked me and wanted to retort about my version of a strong, independent woman in this changing world. And it's not like what it used to be. The world is changing. Jobs are changing. The environment is changing. Cancer and disease and chronic illness are on the rise. And you can play the game of being the only breadwinner and be out there, but then you realize you can't compete with the world and the microbes. That's what you're up against, are the microbes that you're going to have to get treated for when you're out there being an independent woman, right? And girlfriends can't save you. They can only distract you from your own misery of loneliness. You have to have a universal basic income so that way you're not constantly in competition with someone. That's what Social Security was there for, was that when those are finally done with work and they're decrepit and they're old and they can't work anymore, they had something to rely on. Okay? That was Roosevelt's claim to fame, I think. Was it Theodore Roosevelt? Was the Social Security system. And so one day it will come to a universal basic income, and then whatever on top of that, you develop ideas to innovate the world. Do you know how to become an independent woman? You figure out what you can live on. You stay home and stay safe and release the demons, and you don't rely on the government for your health care. You don't need to treat disease. And you are amenable to all food without going into anaphylactic reaction, requiring someone to give you an EpiPen or give you mouth-to-mouth or do chest compressions on you. And maybe you want to be in a relationship with somebody, but not because you have to. It may have started out that way, but it doesn't have to end up that way. That's called evolution, and many people want to keep me way back in the Dr. Phil days and even before Dr. Phil. They want to throw my past that I've put out there in my face to then discredit what I'm saying today is my evolution. That's what unresourceful, unevolving, bitter, single women do to other women, even married women too. And she was the example of that. I'm not saying her name because I'm not trying to call her out. But if you saw that comment that she posted yesterday, because I didn't delete it right off the bat, then you know who I'm talking about. I'm not calling her out. She knows who she is. And so that's called evolution. And when you are in a transition, things will start off one way and end up another way. And that's okay. That's how change happens. Change does not happen in a vacuum. And yes, you want to have some kind of overall basic universal income so that way you can expand your brain. So the world is changing. But women must understand how to change despite being married. And you have to be resourceful, not so self-sacrificing to prove to everyone that you will die for your independence. Those are the guilt trippers who out there guilt tripping you that they're dying to be independent. Please save them because they were told they had to be independent, which means they had to die for it. You didn't have to die for your independence. You don't even have to trigger cancer from independence. But you must be resourceful to save yourself. When people say, "Oh yeah, I couldn't stay home during the epidemic because I was so needed," and now people who are out there in the epidemic who didn't stay home and stay safe because they were told they were needed, and we thank them for the service. Now they have cancer, and they're still claiming that fame that yeah, we were out there when everyone else was at home. Well, we appreciate. Thank you. I don't know what to do with that. Now you have a chance to redirect because you have cancer. Can you release the demons? Can you eat food? I gotta go to the restroom. Hold on. All right. And so you must be resourceful to save yourself, because there's a way to live from independence without destroying somebody else and without destroying yourself. Everyone gets a choice. Some people know how to be in partnership with people without destroying themselves. And if you have an issue with my version of an independent woman, are you representing what you believe in? Because you do live in a community of people. Are you using people around you? What are you using them for? Are you in a business contract with people? How do you spend your money? What do you spend your money on? Who are you resisting? Why do you feel it's necessary to comment on an opposing comment on someone else's page because they don't represent your ideals? What is wrong with you representing your own ideals? Unless you happen to be ashamed of them. Unresourceful women are jealous of resourceful women. I used to be jealous myself. I used to be jealous of my mother. And she's the ultimate resourceful person ever. And I see nothing wrong with using the resources in your environment within your disposal, because that's called being resourceful and it's legal. In my opinion, stupidity is starving yourself to prove a point. Stupidity is not saving yourself money because you don't like how you saved the money. Oh, I'm not going to use the AARP card because I'm not old, and so I'm not going to save money. My husband was a little bit... I said, hey, honey, he won't even touch the AARP card. Okay? He's like, I'm not 50 yet. I'm not going to say I'm old. I'm like, okay. But if it saves you $8, why wouldn't you use it? If it saves you $15, why wouldn't you use it? So, in my opinion, his reaction to AARP is kind of dumb. That's his opinion. Should I say stupid? No, that's just his opinion. It's a little harsh. Okay, I apologize. Sorry, honey. But it's like you made it mean that saving money castigated your character and status in the community. Resourcefulness is survivability. If you have an issue with someone's resourcefulness, maybe you lack resources yourself. Strong, independent women know how to utilize their environment without victimizing anyone else around them. And they enter into contracts they can uphold on their end and still develop boundaries. And independent women can also be on their own without dying from loneliness. Independent women can be on their own and relish solitude. If you are in fear of an independent woman who is okay with being on their own, even though she's married, maybe you can't hold on to a man because you feel you cannot establish boundaries with your man, and so you man hate. And also hate women who are married to men who claim to be independent women because you thought you owned the patent on that because you are single. Single, unmarried women think they own independence, and you can't be on your own as you are around your girlfriends all the time. Or you have an animal. You have a cat. And you have a gallery. So you're relying on people to buy your artwork all the time. And you're constantly selling yourself. And castigating others who don't sell themselves and die for their independence. And maybe you had nothing to bring to the table, which are a lot of single women's issues. They bring nothing to the table to the men they want to be with, and they don't ever intend to make themselves useful besides sex, right? And once the sex goes, there goes the relations. There isn't one way to being on your own, okay? You can be married and be extremely independent. But I'll tell you, it's very tough being married and establishing your own independence, which is why many women cannot be married, because they don't know how to establish their own independence and boundaries. And so they think being single is the way to be independent. Not necessarily, my dear. What if you didn't have your girlfriends? What if you didn't have a husband or a wife? What if you was just you and your husband who had their own life, but came together occasionally, especially when it mattered? What if you could be independent and married without relying on everyone around you to keep you company? What if you didn't have to be single to be independent? Oh, that's something most women have not figured out, have never figured out, especially the feminists. It's all or nothing to some women. By the way, hold on. I fed my mother the same argument. Yeah, dry lips. They're healing. Wow. Okay. I threw in her face that my dad put her through school. But guess what she did? She made something of herself. Because I remember when I was trying to go to school and I couldn't afford to go to school full-time, only part-time, because I didn't have anyone paying for my school. I had to do financial aid, and I had to work part-time. So I took full financial aid and worked part-time And that was fine. And I had a boyfriend at the time that's kind of helping me through that. But then when that dried up, then I had to work full time and then go to school part time. And I didn't want to do that. And then I just lost interest because it was just hard to juggle both. I had PMDD. There was no way I could do both. And she was lucky enough to have someone pay for her schooling. And that's what I felt resentful of, the fact that she had it easier. But nobody has it easier. Everyone has a situation, right? And so, but guess what she did? She made something of herself. She took whatever resources she had and made something of herself, and she made me. Does the ends justify the means? Absolutely. Sometimes it does. Just make sure you can deal with the means justifying the end. Never ever be ashamed of evolution and change, because some women are fucking jealous of you. I used to be jealous of my mother, that she had a great husband who put her through school, that she had friends to babysit her children when she was in school. But that was her strategy. That was her resourcefulness. That was her innovation. She fucking rocks. She's a woman of the times from way back when. She's silent generation. I can only imagine what she went through in her 20s and 30s and 40s and what she had to do to survive. Okay? And that's the thing, is that even though I can be really aggressive around the things I'm aggressive around, people do what they do to survive, but I am representing someone who had to go through a lot to survive, and also have an opinion and an observation around my community and even other women. And so I'm just like my mother. I know how to utilize resources as well as give back and make somebody else just as good as I am, if not better. Okay? So when I met him, he was working for a landscape company, and then we moved to Florida, and then we're like, okay, not there, we go to California. He then went for a landscape company, worked for them, and I wrote out his resume. He didn't have a resume. I wrote one out for him. And I had a computer, I wrote it out for him and sent it off to places. He got job offers and whatever, he did what he did. And then we went, what did we do after that? Oh, we went to truck school. Yeah, we went to truck school because we were in California. And then we were in a motel because that person took our rent money and spent it on her boyfriend. And so I didn't get evicted, but that person that we were roommates with got evicted. So we ended up in a hotel, and then we went to truck school together. We got married, went to truck school together, and that's how we did shit. Okay? And so I took my resource that I knew was writing resumes, because I was good at that. I was doing that for myself. He had skills, and I was working for the insurance, working for somebody else, cold calling and stuff. And so that's how we juggled. And then we both applied to Swift training, truck school. Both got in. I let him do it because there was no way I was going to do that. I thought I could do it, but I'll tell you, trying to do a straight line backing and then having to stand on the clutch, maneuvering an 80,000 pound truck. And I'm remembering what it's like going down steep grades, 9% grade at 50 miles an hour in sleet and rain and snow, and then trying to back up a truck and blind backing and all. Oh gosh, he had the experience because he was a landscaper pulling a trailer behind him. He understood all the mechanisms. He's really smart. And so my husband and I worked hard together to get where we are. I didn't marry up. I didn't even marry down. I married my equal, and I made something of myself. And it was basically non-traditional. I married a stranger, and I made it work. And I continue to work very hard to make my marriage work. And I'm still independent, and I don't have to be single to be independent. And the only reason why you know who I am, troll, is because of the Dr. Phil bullshit. So I made something of myself, regardless of how you characterize what I did with the whole Jilly Juice world. You know me because I made something of myself. I made a name for myself. You could say internet famous, whatever. But I made something of myself. And it may not have been what you've done as far as your art gallery and hanging out with cats, coloring your hair orange, yellow, blue, and purple. But I also made something of myself. And you have no right to castigate another woman's resourcefulness unless you happen to lack on your own. And so I stuck my neck out. I developed an innovation that you obviously can't handle. And many people are jealous. They can't handle that. So they hate on it. Predictable. Okay? And so, anyways, that's all I'm going to say on that one. Whew! I got to blow my nose. All right. So now you know why all the cancer, disease, and chronic illness and died suddenly was because the environment is constantly changing, and you either support the changes properly or you resist change and die from it. Okay. And yeah, to confirm what Yuval Noah Harari is saying as far as we're in World War III, yeah, World War III maybe have already started with Russian invasion, Zelensky says. Okay. We're in World War III, guys. All right, now, I don't know if the algorithm picked up on this. So I'm just going to say that we have been taught to be in fear of food and symptoms and pain and suffering and unknown. And what if you were fearless in pain, suffering, and food and the unknown, and fearful of your government and fearful of animals and humans and the public? You can only imagine how strategic you could be dealing with people, your environment, with animals, and you're able to handle the food supply. You can handle pain and suffering, and then you'd make such amazing choices that would keep sustaining your longevity. But when you are afraid of pain and suffering and food, and you're afraid of the unknown and changes, but you're fearless against your government, you're fearless with, what is your fearless? Oh, fearless of people, and fearless of your government, and fearless of animals. Then you will take on microbes and remedies and surgeries that will inevitably take you down. You won't deal with pain and suffering because you're afraid of it. You don't deal with food because you're afraid of food. That's how the fear was weaponized against you. And so the instability and the fear of my mother and the punishments that weren't like that bad, really. But the fear of my mother and her holding me accountable for what choices I made, that was the gift given to me. The JJ was born from the fear of DEATH. So I strategized my own survival by not asking the GOVT to treat me for any disease anymore. And I'm still a contributing member of society who pays your taxes and abides by the laws, and I mind my own business. I do not fear DEATH. If you do not fear DEATH, then you have no problem with DYING suddenly. So what are you resisting? Okay, and so if you're in fear of the GOVT controlling you, are they in your house? Are they telling you what to eat? Are they forcing protocols on you? Are they forcing you to take away your pain and suffering? I find it hilarious when people say they don't fear DEATH. But yeah, you do. Or you wouldn't be treating everything. Okay? So, I mean, okay. And so anyways, so that's why we're called Generation X. We are the variable. Many of us were trained in the fear. Others had absolutely nothing to fear in their life. And so we'll see how people manifest their childhood. We will be entering into a moment of truth. We are in the X Games. XOXOX. And so raised in fear saved my life. When you get so comfortable and so secure, people enter into danger and they pass away. And so that's why you have to understand the power of FEAR, because then you can tap into it when something actually is dangerous. Because you were allowed to have that hormone be triggered, that adrenaline, the fight or flight. But now you have to characterize fear correctly to save you, not destroy you. And so that's the thing, is that immigrants and refugees had to start over again so many times. That's the thing about what's going on, is that a lot of Americans have been so secure and have such a predictable life. The traditions, the security, no one was out to get them, and they never really had to deal with too much. And then 9/11 happened, and then now this great reset. And some people are going to have a rude awakening because they've been so comfortable. And so everything was so predictable in their world. And so the poles are flipping. Do you think it's evil what they're doing? Well, there's a lot of people out there that try to put the fear of death in me. I was getting death threats just for my ideas. Can you imagine having to live with that around people that don't like you because you have a different thought process, you look different, you have a different idea? You're not a single independent woman, and so if you're married, you can't claim independence? Oh my God. See, that's why should you fear your peers? You should fear your government. You should, absolutely. You should fear your parents. Absolutely. And so that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm not going to go into too much detail. But okay, so I understand the power of fear, and I use it wisely. And I am a successful, independent woman who is married, who isn't working a traditional job, but made a name for herself in her own right. And she didn't have to have a degree or everyone buying my artwork and books. I mean, they did back then, and that's fine. But now that I've evolved and have assimilated on such a level, well, when you assimilate and you're not in such resistance, then people don't want to buy your shit. And that's okay. You don't need to. You don't have to. I'm not trying to sell pain and suffering. Okay? And so, yeah, success isn't always what people think it is. Success is just surviving another day despite everything working against you. Success is the ability to change and represent and redefine norms. That's my opinion. But hey, you can have your own opinion. If you want to stay traditional and be so secure and tucked away and be traumatized when change happens, that's fine. That's your choice. But the whole J world is about redefining everything. It's about understanding why we are in this great reset. Because people are stuck in their paradigms, rigid, entrenched, intolerant, deficient, malnourished. And it's time to also understand the rules of engagement when it comes to socially acceptable communication. Trolling people and disparaging people on their page and targeting people is socially unacceptable. That's why there's community standards. All right. Learn the ways of the world. Bye.